We mustn't lurk in the comment section. It's rude. Last week I posted a review for the Disney movie Cruella, a live-action film that expanded the character of Cruella. I enjoyed it a lot more than I expected, and you can check out the video if you want to. You could certainly say that movie hit the spot. Mainly because I found Maleficent to be such a letdown, so I was kind of expecting a movie on a similar vein. But it also got me thinking. With villains like Cruella and Maleficent getting their own movies, and a sequel for Cruella already confirmed, it makes you wonder if any other Disney villains will get the same treatment. After all, as Raindrops say, 2 is company, 3 is a cloud. Sure, these characters have appeared in other media, including Disney's House of Mouse, House of Villains, and the live-action series Once Upon a Time, and more. So far, only Maleficent and Cruella have starred in their own movies. As far as character development goes, the Disney villain to get the most development outside of the movie they starred in was Cruella, having starred in 2 animated movies, 3 live-action movies, 2 animated series, as well as brief cameos in other animated shows like House of Mouse and more specifically House of Villains. Disney villains have always had a history of being far more entertaining and interesting than the main characters of the story, mainly because most of the time their backstories are shrouded in mystery or explained away in a throwaway comment, allowing fans to basically make up their own ideas of their backstory. Cruella, for instance, was simply Anita's dearly devoted old schoolmate. Maleficent simply wasn't wanted. Ursula was a fish out of water. At one point in the movie, she literally was. And let's not forget how successful The Little Mermaid was when it was released in 1989. It certainly made a splash. Oh, that was another live-action mermaid movie. Though I don't consider The Little Mermaid to be one of my favourite Disney movies, I do consider Ursula to be one of Disney's most interesting villains. But do I think she deserves her own movie? One of the first videos I ever made was a review for The Little Mermaid. I've learned a lot since then and have wanted to revisit this movie for a while, and this felt like the right time. You know, because life can be a real beach sometimes. Having live-action movies starring villains means they get more character development, though there is a question as to if they deserve all this attention, as some people mistake the limelight as some sort of redemption story, instead of a window into who these characters are. After all, a character should be defined by more than their actions, at least in my opinion. It's the motivation behind them that matters, or at least their own justification for these acts of villainy. It's not excusing them, but to me, knowing what led them to being the villains they are in the movie helps us to answer the question why, from a psychological point of view at least. It's probably the reason why movies like Wreck-It Ralph, Despicable Me, and Megamind were more popular than expected, because they were essentially about villains. But what about Ursula? Would a movie about her make a splash, or would it just sink into an inevitable trench of predictability, or lose sight of who she was in the original movie entirely? For me personally, villains, antagonists, obstacles, flaws, whatever you want to refer to them as, are the driving force behind the plot of the story they are in. Without Ursula, would Ariel have had the balls to leave her family to be with Prince Eric if Ursula had not made her the offer to sign away her soul in exchange for human legs? In the original Hans Christian Andersen tale, the Sea Witch played a very minor part, but it was Disney that expanded this character into an antagonist. Of course, we're sticking with the Disney canon here and asking the question, does Ursula deserve her own movie? In the Disney versions of these sort of fairy tales, the stories are made overly theatrical, more accessible to a general audience, more child-friendly, and frankly, they make the characters far more memorable, or at least make the visual style chosen for the movie stand out compared to other versions of the same story. First, we have to ask the question, who is Ursula? To me, a movie named after an iconic villain shouldn't just be about telling the story they're originally from their perspective. As popular as these sort of stories are, I find it far more interesting seeing a movie that is able to stand apart from the story we know them from. It's why I find Cruella so fun. It's a movie that should tell us who they are. It shouldn't just serve as a pity card or a woe is me sort of thing like Maleficent was, forgetting that she was the mistress of all evil entirely. Oh dear, what an awkward situation indeed. Ursula embraces the label Sea Witch. In the song Poor Unfortunate Souls, she admits that she was a nasty person in the past and how she has come to see the light. An outright lie, of course, but it does tell us one thing: she was shunned because of her talent for magic. A movie about Ursula could show a time when she lived at the palace and what led to her being banished. A villain will often portray themselves as blameless, or convince the protagonists that they are the victim, or the cliche, "we're not so different, you and I." A villain becomes one because of a choice they make, though with Disney they tend to showcase anyone who isn't what society sees as beautiful or accepted. Ursula is a larger woman, but is never ashamed of her size. If anything, she's proud of it. And frankly, she shouldn't be ashamed of her size. She is Disney's only plus-size style icon. I hope you're not too shell-shocked on hearing that. This, to me, is a very attractive quality. She is comfortable in her own skin, and quite rightly so. She is a beautiful character. She presents herself in a very attractive and sexual way, using body language as a way to both entice and to intimidate. Hey, how do you make an octopus laugh? Give it 10 tickles.
Yes, I know Ursula is technically a squid because she only has 6 tentacles, not 8.
Ariel is a young, naive, innocent girl who is on the cusp of womanhood. She isn't aware of how beautiful she is yet, or how to be confident in her own skin. So seeing a woman like Ursula seem so confident in herself would be a quality Ariel would want to adopt. Ariel is not forced into doing anything, but is manipulated psychologically into signing the contract. The character of Ursula is inspired in both appearance and demeanour by the drag legend Divine. The power of drag is all about performance, presence, activism, resistance, and of course self-expression. When Ariel first enters Ursula's lair, the first thing that Ursula does is she styles her hair and does her makeup. This can't be seen as simply an act of vanity, but what Ursula is really doing here is empowering herself. That's what makeup does. It's not about hiding flaws, it's about preparing for war, while also disarming Ariel. But Ursula's real target wasn't Ariel herself. Ursula used Ariel to get to Triton, so maybe a movie about Ursula could also show how these two characters interacted when they were younger. It is suggested in a deleted scene of The Little Mermaid that Triton and Ursula were siblings.
There's a whole world of mer people under the sea.
King Triton's their ruler.
He's got 7 fair daughters.
And a witch of a sister named Ursula.
You could also say Ursula presents herself as the wise old folk facade, a trope used before in Disney from the very beginning.
Come in, my child. My dear, sweet child. Unfortunate merfolk like yourself. The child.
She relies on diminishing her target, making them feel vulnerable by referring to them as my dear child. She adopts a grandmotherly type tone when talking to Ariel. I think this would have been far more creepy if we knew that Ursula was Ariel's aunt, and maybe Ariel wasn't aware of this at all, and maybe this was revealed to her later in the movie by her father. I don't know, it would have been far more interesting. But then again, depicting aunts and uncles as villains is something that Disney decided to do later on, especially with The Lion King. Talk about a monkey's uncle. Ursula is what's known as a bad Samaritan. She takes people in and seems to want to help them at first, but it's all for personal gain. Perhaps a movie about Ursula could show her to want to use her magic to help people unfortunate in a legit way, but then slowly becomes corrupted by the magic and ended up using vulnerable people to get more power. Or perhaps her pity slowly turned into seeing them as pathetic. But what was her goal of adding to her little garden? Were these poor unfortunate souls the merfolk that shunned her, and this is her way of getting revenge? Or were they just random victims? She wears a mask of altruism, pretending her goal is to help the unfortunate, or at least those she considers less fortunate than herself. She offers Ariel help so she can not only find her prince, but also be part of the human world, which is something Ursula is fully aware that Ariel wants. Ursula takes advantage of Ariel's wants, and she doesn't straight out say she could turn her human. She waits until Ariel asks her, "You can do that?" And then she knows she's got her. And the audience is reminded of the fact that she's taking advantage of Ariel by an evil smirk. It's pretty much the equivalent of a classic villain twirling their moustache. To me, a villain needs to be interesting, entertaining, and fun to watch. Ursula is sadistic, vengeful, and opportunistic. Though she is all of these things and more, there is a sophistication to her theatrics which is backed up by her ingenious design, her animation, and her voice acting. Though she is intelligent, she is also arrogant, egotistical, and vain. Her weakness is her hunger for power. So where did this hunger come from? I know most of you are probably hating all of these water and fish puns, but honestly, they're cracking me up. Does she deserve her own movie, like Maleficent and Cruella did? Is it inevitable that this will happen? Though I'm not sure what more could be said about Ursula that can't be explained away by watching the deleted scenes from the animated movie, which does explain her backstory, or by watching the 3 episodes of the Little Mermaid TV series Ursula appears in. More of her backstory is also shown in another deleted scene from the sequel, The Little Mermaid 2, in a deleted song called Gonna Get My Wish, which shows Ursula alongside her crazy younger sister Morgana and their mother. This scene boycotts the possible fact of Ursula being Triton's sister though. Morgana being another sibling is a little lazy to me and does throw Ursula's backstory into question. If she lived at the palace, where was Morgana all this time? But then this was a deleted scene, so I guess, continuity doesn't really matter here. Though there are unrelated and very different versions of Ursula depicted in other media, such as the series Once Upon a Time, but I haven't gotten far enough into that show yet to know that version all that well. And yeah, she also features in the Descendant films, but they're not really all that interesting to me. If an Ursula movie was made, I would hope it would be based on the fantastic Disney novel Poor Unfortunate Soul, A Tale of the Sea Witch by Serena Valentino, and also a different backstory is given to her in the stage musical version. So maybe a hybrid of these 2 stories. But one thing's for sure, I hope that if an Ursula movie is made, I hope the questions like, where did the Nautilus necklace come from? Where did Ursula get her talent for magic from? Was it inherited or was it forced on her? Why was she banished from Atlantica? What happened between her and King Triton? Will the movie confirm they were siblings? Was she born as a Cicalia or was she cursed to be one? Or maybe even about the Leviathan she ends up living inside the remains of. I'd love to learn more about that, though that might be because I've played Subnautica too much. I think there is a lot of potential for an Ursula movie. It's perhaps inevitable that there will be one after the success of Cruella, also especially since there is a live-action adaptation already in the works. I would be glad to see it, but we shall see what the tide washes up.
Oh my god, enough with all the water puns!
I'm Mad Munchkin, stay creative!